Suman Jain ma'am would be dealing with foundation and geotechnical engineering in the upcoming lectures. She is presently working as an associate professor in Sinhagad Institute of Technology, Lonavala. Before that, she was working with Sinhagad College of Engineering, Pune for past 20 years. A vast teaching experience of 20 years. She has completed her B and ME Geotechnical from COE Pune. She is also having a 6 years work experience as a professional experience. She has worked with companies like Shapurji Palanji. She has also published more than 40 plus technical papers in national and international journals, conferences, and co-authored more than 8 books on geotechnical and foundation engineering. Guided n number of students of undergraduate and postgraduate students for projects. Has attended more than 40 plus seminar conferences. She is also a member of many of the professional societies. So today we will request Suman Jain ma'am to please guide the GATE aspirants with the foundation engineering. Ma'am, you can please
Thank you, sir.
share your screen. Yes, thank you. Please continue, ma'am.
Sir, is the screen visible, sir?
Yes, the screen is visible, ma'am, and you are perfectly audible, ma'am.
Okay. Good evening, all. So today we are going to discuss about the GATE exam, and foundation engineering is the topic that I'm going to deal with. Basically, the syllabus, as far as the syllabus for GATE is concerned, so these are a few of the topics that are listed in the GATE syllabus. So we are going to start with the soil exploration studies, which and then in the soil exploration, we are having about the drilling techniques, soil sampling, plate load test, standard penetration test, and the cone penetration test. The earth pressure theories for lateral pressure distribution of Rankine and Coulomb theory. Then we have the stability of slopes, stress distribution theory, and then the design for shallow and deep foundations. Now, the nature of the questions that I have seen for the GATE exam. So they are mostly numerical based because there are a lot many formulas that are involved in the design of the foundations. So basically, we will just take an overview of the topics, each and every topic, wherein I will discuss about the nature of the questions that are asked in the GATE exam based on these. So soil investigation is we have to know about the soil perfectly. Otherwise, we cannot design the foundations. So the foundations, they are going to be buried into the ground, but whatever we have the structures above, they are going to be stable and as per the design only if the foundations are correctly designed. So for that, we need to have perfect investigations. So you all know that why soil investigation program is going to give you the data about all the soil profile, the position of the water table, and based on this, we are going to design the foundations. When we come to the exploration program, the main criteria for an exploration program is to decide the number of boreholes that we are going to take and the spacing of the boreholes and also the depth of the boreholes. Up to what depth we need to carry out the investigation technique. So naturally, this is going to depend on the type of the structure, the type of the loading, the nature of the structure, the importance of the structure. All these factors are going to help us to determine these criteria of the extent of exploration and the number of holes that we have to take. Now, in this exploration program, we have two types of exploration studies. One is the shallow depth study, and that's the deep investigation, wherein we do deep borings. If when the type of the project is very small and we have to carry out only shallow investigations, then this kind of trial pits are just going to be sufficient for the exploration program. That will give us the undisturbed samples as well as it will tell us the nature of the subsoil profile. Now, how many boreholes we should take? If we take a few number of boreholes for a big project, so that is not going to be sufficient, as the soil may vary to a great extent in between two number of boreholes. If the soil strata is uniform in between the boreholes, then a few boreholes are sufficient. But if there is a lot of variation in the soil profile, then we have to have a number of boreholes. But sometimes when the soil profile is erratic or it is uncertain, in that case, even increasing the number of boreholes is not going to give us sufficient data, but at the same time, it is going to increase the budget to a great extent. So what we can do is we have to have amalgamation of various type of tests, which will help us to control the budget and also give us a better soil profile. So we can have in between test pits and more of boreholes. So that will be dependent upon the type, size of the project, the budget, and the variation in the soil profile. Also, certain criteria are there based on which we have to decide the spacing of the boreholes. So for different infrastructure projects, the spacing is going to vary. For a building project, the spacing will be different. Now, if the shallow boring is to be taken, then in that case, we can use these tools for carrying out the investigation. But if deep boring is required, then we require such boring equipment to carry out deeper investigations. After the investigation of the borehole is done, then the data is presented in this form, wherein with the depth we know what are the types of the soil, where is the position of the groundwater table, and also some of the properties of the soil are known. Now, if we want to know the type of the soil properties, so for these other laboratory tests are to be conducted, for which we need to carry out sampling. Now, the type of the samples that we get from this borehole will vary depending upon the type of investigation. If we want undisturbed soil samples, so in that case, we have to carry out the boring technique using different sampling tubes. So one of the questions that is asked in the GATE exam is on the degree of disturbance for the samples. So this can be represented in the form of area ratio as shown here, wherein the outer diameter and inner diameter of the sample is given. And on the basis of that nature, we can find out whether the degree of disturbance is more or less. If for area ratios less than 10%, we consider the soil sample to be undisturbed. And for area ratio more than 25, it is considered to be a undisturbed sample. So what type of tests are required? On the basis of that, we have to decide whether the disturbed sample will be enough for us, or we need to go in for an undisturbed sampling. Normally for clay samples, we can get very good undisturbed samples, but getting undisturbed samples in case of sands is very difficult. Besides the area ratio, there are two more criteria for the knowing the degree of disturbance. One is the inside clearance and one is the outside clearance, which is also based basically on the outer and inner diameters of the sampling tubes. So this Shelby tube is a very good sampling tube wherein we can get undisturbed samples. The split spoon sampler, which is shown here, is used in case of the standard penetration test, for which the degree of disturbance is very high. You can see the area ratio is around 112%. So which gives a very undisturbed sample, which can be used only for tests wherein the degree of disturbance does not matter much. Now you can see in this list the degree of disturbance that is due to the various types of sampler, and accordingly what are the types of the soil samples we are getting, and for which types of soil, which type of sampler is going to be suitable. Basically, if we have to have index properties, such as the water content or the size gradation. For this, undisturbed samples can be worked out. But if we want to carry out strength tests such as consolidation or shear strength or compaction test, in that case, we need quite undisturbed samples. As far as soil and rock is concerned, for that also the different tests to be carried out are different, and the sampling tests are also going to be different. In rock samples, we have two criteria to decide about the quality of the rock sample. One is the core recovery ratio and other is the rock quality designation. So after the boring is done, then these are the boxes in which the soil sample or the core samples of rock are placed, and the criteria like this RQD and core recovery is found out to know the quality of the rock. So the questions in GATE are also based on this, wherein the length of the soil sample is given, and based on that we can calculate the RQD and the core recovery ratio. Now the various strength tests that are required to be studied include the standard penetration test, the plate load test, and the cone penetrometer tests. So this is the setup of the standard penetration test, wherein we have this split spoon sampler, the drill rod, and a hammer. Here you can see a 65 kg hammer is there, which is going to drop through a height of 760 mm on the drill rod, and that will penetrate the sampler. So in this test, we are also getting the samples, but the samples will be disturbed in case the soil is sandy soil. But in case it is a soft cohesive soil, so we can get in fairly undisturbed samples also. Now in this case, when the 65 kg hammer is going to drop through this height, so we have to count the number of blows required for the penetration of the soil sampler. For first 150 mm penetration, the readings are not recorded, but further 300 mm of penetration, how many blows are required, that is called as the blow count or the N value. Based on this N value, we can decide the type and the properties of the soil, because these properties of the soil will be correlated with other properties of the soil based on the N value. This is the SPT hammer. You can see the relations of SPT with clay soil properties. So undrained cohesion will tell you, so if the N value is 2, so the undrained cohesion value is around 12, and so on. If the N value is more than 30, which indicates the undrained cohesion is more than 200 kPa. So that indicates that the soil is very hard. So in this SPT test, the questions that are asked are the SPT value, the recorded N value will be given to you, and what will be the corrected N value for different types of soil based on the corrections. We have the dilatancy correction and the overburden pressure correction. So applying these corrections, how we can calculate the from the recorded N value, what is the corrected N value, that questions can be asked. Similarly, the relations of SPT with density index in case of granular soils is tabulated here. Now then we have the cone penetration test. In this cone penetration test, so we have a cone, circular cone at the bottom with an angle of 60 degrees. So it is pushed into the ground. In two ways, we can have the static cone penetration test, wherein the gradual penetration of the cone is done, and the other one is the dynamic cone penetration test, wherein the similar setup of the SPT test is there only instead of the split spoon sampler, we have the cone at the bottom. So we can measure the number of blows required for the penetration of the cone. So in this cone penetrometer, we cannot get a sample. But the advantage of this cone penetration test is if we want to explore a very big area. So these penetrations can be taken at close intervals, and we know how much is the resistance to penetration. So from the values of resistance to penetration, we can correlate with the properties of the soil. So in less time, we can get more data with the we have such pocket cone meters also, which are very handy and which can read the strength. So you just press it on the ground, and the reading on the scale will give you the strength of the tip. So this is very suitable for uncohesive clays. For granular soils, we normally need a dynamic cone penetrometer. Now, in addition to the tip resistance, we can also get the frictional resistance of the sleeve. So the side friction also can be calculated using this cone penetrometers. You can see the type of difference in the sampler for the SPT test and the cone penetrometer. The penetrometer also can be connected to the pressure mechanism, wherein the resistance to pressure in a freshly drilled hole can be checked. That is advanced tests. Now the plate load test. This plate load test is carried out directly in the field, which will give you the bearing capacity of the soil. The earlier test that we have seen, so the results from they are not directly giving you the strength or the bearing capacity, but we are going to relate the N value or the resistance values to the bearing capacity. Here in the plate load test, what is the advantage is directly we get the bearing capacity of the soil, but then this test is a very extensive test. It is costly test, and it takes a lot of time to get the bearing capacity, and so there are limitations in conducting this test. The result of this test is in the form of this load settlement curve, whereas as we go on increasing the pressure or the load on the plate, we get the corresponding settlement. So we use a square plate of different dimensions depending upon the type of the soil, and we can plot this pressure versus curve to get the ultimate bearing capacity. On this plate, we are putting the dial gauges wherein the settlement is measured. So for every increment of pressure, what is the corresponding settlement is what we are going to record at various time intervals, and that is going to be recorded in the form of a graph, which will give you the load settlement curve. Now, here one of the limitation of this plate load test is expressed, wherein we are having a limiting plate size. So the pressure bulb, which is the area of influence of the load that is applied on the plate, so which is around equal, the depth of this pressure bulb is equal to around 2 times the width of the plate. So the depth of the soil that is going to be explored is going to be limited, whereas when the actual footing is placed and it is loaded, so the depth of pressure bulb is going to be more. So if the soil is the same in the both the cases, then there will we will get the bearing capacity to be quite exact. But if there is variation in the soil profiles, or we have with the depth, if the soil is changing, then in that case, if we are encountering a weaker layer above a strong layer, then in that case, whatever the results of bearing capacity we are getting may be erroneous, and that is one of the limitations of this test. Now, all the tests that we have discussed, so here we can have the cost versus accuracy. So as the accuracy of the test goes on increasing, naturally the cost of that test will be more. If we need very accurate data for the design, then we have to go in for a specialized test, which are naturally going to prove to be costly. But so we have to, whenever we are deciding with the exploration program, so we have to take this into consideration, that how accurate the data is required, and how we have to plan the exploration program, which type of tests to be conducted, how many boreholes to be conducted, what should be the depth of exploration, so as to decide with the cost of exploration. So pocket penetrometer, I told you, it is very handy and it gives the quickest result, but the accuracy of that is also questioned. So if we see the pressure meter test, which is the most versatile test, but that is giving us more accurate results. But at the same time, it is going to increase the cost of exploration. Now, whatever tests we have seen, these results are going to be written in the form of an exploration report, which is going to help the design engineer to design the foundations. This is all the data that is required to be presented in the exploration report. Now, as I told you, the gate questions that are asked on the degree of disturbance of the soil sample, the SPT values, the SPT correlations, and in the plate load test, we have the correlation between the bearing capacity of the that we have got by the plate results and the actual footing results. So how we can extrapolate the results in case of sandy soils and clay soils. Based on that formula, the questions asked. The next topic that we have is about the determination of the lateral thrust. Now, in this case, we have to discuss about the two theories, that is the Rankins earth pressure theory and the Coulomb's earth pressure theory. Though most of the questions are based on the Rankins earth theory, because Coulomb's theory is mostly a graphical method, and so not more questions are asked on that, but whatever questions are asked are on this Rankins theory. In this, we have the different conditions, the at rest condition based on the movement of the wall with respect to the backfill. We have the active earth pressure and the passive earth pressure. So now these, we have different relations of the determination of the lateral thrust for different soil conditions, and different criteria, just like we have the backfill which is submerged, the backfill which is dry, or the backfill which is having a with uniform surcharge, backfill with sloping surface, and so on. So the various relations based on which we will be given the height of the retaining wall, and we have to calculate the lateral thrust. This is the Coulomb's wedge theory. After the lateral earth pressure, we have the stability of slopes. Now, in this stability of slopes also, there are many methods, but as far as the syllabus is concerned, we have the Taylor stability analysis and the Bishop's method. In case of the Taylor stability analysis, we have dimensionless Taylor's number, which helps us to determine the factor of safety for stability of slope. And then we have the Bishop's method for both. Now, these methods are to be used for finite slope and infinite slope. Bishop's method is only for the finite slope, whereas the Taylor stability number can be used for both the finite slopes as well as the infinite slope. So this is how we have to consider the failure surface in case of infinite slopes. consider the forces acting on the wedge of soil, and based on that, we have to determine the factor of safety. We have Boussinesq's theory. In this Boussinesq's theory, we have to find out the vertical stress distribution due to point load or circular or rectangular load. So, which is based on the following assumptions. So this is the relation we have for vertical stress sigma z, which is based on the loading Q, point load acting. Then we have the radial distance and the depth Z. So on the, if we have these values, we can substitute in this formula and get the vertical stress. Or if the vertical stress is given, then naturally we can find out the radial distance or the depth of the loading. Then pressure bulb concept, wherein we have to find out the depth of the load, the depth of the soil, which is influenced by the loading, which we have seen. This is the application of which is there in the determination of the depth of exploration when we are carrying out the site investigation. So how much ever depth of exploration is there, that will be based on this pressure bulb. Then we have the contact pressure distribution, wherein the effect or how the pressure is changing with the loading and the type of the soil, that gives us the contact pressure distribution for clayey soil, for sandy or granular soil, and for different types of footings, whether it is a flexible footing or rigid bit footing. Then we have the design of shallow and deep foundations. Foundation bearing capacity criteria is going to be based on the shear strength failure and the settlement criteria. So any foundation that we design has to be safe against shear failure. Also, the settlement of that structure should be within the permissible limits. Assumptions for Terzaghis bearing capacity theory. Now, this is the basic equation of Terzaghi theory. So, at least one question we normally have to find out the ultimate bearing capacity of the soil. So, the soil properties are given to you, and the width of the foundation is given to you, depth of the foundation is given to you, and you have to calculate the ultimate bearing capacity. So, basically, Terzaghi has derived this equation for a strip footing, and then the corrections are done to make it suitable for a square foundation or for a circular foundation. So besides Terzaghi's bearing capacity, we also have Meyerhoff's analysis, wherein the failure criteria is slightly extended. The failure surface is extended up to the ground level, so that the angle of beta is greater than phi. And based on this theory, we are having the Meyerhoff's equation. So which is a slight modification to the Terzaghi's theory, so that this bearing capacity theory can be made suitable for deep foundations also. Another kind of question that is asked is the effect of table on the bearing capacity. Basically, we have the basic equation by Terzaghi, and in that we are adding two factors, that is RW1 and RW2, which are called as the reduction factors. So if the water table position is known to us, we can calculate these water table correction factors and accordingly modify and find out the safe bearing capacity of the soil. Similarly, we have relations for determination of the consolidation settlement as well as immediate settlement. So if we have clayey soil where therein the consolidation settlement is important, so using the Terzaghi's settlement equation, we can find out the consolidation settlement for clayey soils, or we can use the immediate settlement equation to find out the settlement in case of granular or sandy soils. So we are having a number of deep foundations where shallow foundations are not suitable. So we need to go in for the deep foundations. As far as the syllabus is concerned, we have to concentrate only on the piles, the design for pile foundations. So here we are having to we are going to study about the two types of load carrying capacities by static formulae as well as by dynamic formulae. Now, static formulae are for the bored piles, wherein we are going to excavate the soil, and in that we are going to place the reinforcement and concrete. So this type of pile is the bored pile, wherein we are going to the piles. Sorry. Then we have dynamic formulae. Now this formula is for the driven piles. So if we have a timber pile or precast concrete pile or a steel pile, so it is hammered into the ground wherever the pile is required to be placed. And then the carrying capacity of the soil. So for that we have the various dynamics. We normally the modifier formula is the most suitable, or we can, just as we have discussed about the plate load test. So similarly, and the field to find out the actual load capacity of the pile, we have this pile load test. We have two kinds of tests. One is a static pile load test, and other one is the cyclic pile load test. In the static pile load test, we are having gradually increase in the load on the pile, and the corresponding settlement is to be noted. The setup is quite similar to the plate load test, only in case of the plate load test, we have the square plate on which the settlement gauges are placed, which record the corresponding settlement as per the load applied. Herein, directly the settlement gauges are to be placed on the tip of the pile, wherein the settlement is to be recorded after the load is gradually applied in smaller increments. Whereas in cyclic pile load test, so we apply a load and then we unload it and see the change in the settlement, and then the next increment of load is applied. Then again the unloading is done. So that is called as the cyclic load test, wherein you can see the load settlement curve. There are a lot of circles are there, wherein we are applying the load and then unloading it, so the rebound of the curve can be seen in this. So this is the cyclic pile load test. Now, in many cases, for deep foundations, a single pile is not going to be sufficient. So we have to go in for a group of piles. So we can find out the group capacity of the pile by the block analysis. So group of pile is going to be considered as a single bigger pile, and then using the static formulae, we have to find out the bearing capacity of the whole pile group. So if we are considering the group capacity of the pile, we can use this formula and find out the group capacity. So we have discussed about the main topics that are there in the foundation engineering and the corresponding questions on the topics that are nearly asked. In case you have any doubts, you are welcome.